Sometimes things work out together in ways that you know are not about your own meager skills. You go in a direction, you do your very best, but you're stressed out all along the way because it seems your resources do not measure up to what's required of you. I think an awful lot of our lives match this kind of experience. Surely, raising kids fits that profile. Our work lives often fit into it. Really difficult experiences fit into it. Health challenges, death, grief. Those are the times that we live one day at a time. When we often quote Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for those who love God, who are called according to God's purposes. I think of faith as a story. To tell the story and find meaning and purpose in what is happening in our lives requires faith. Faith is the causality between the plot events of our lives. Without faith, things that happen to us are merely random events and chance. But there are times, we all know this to be true, when the story is easy to tell, when events cohere and form a pattern in such a way that helps us define our purpose and our meaning in life. We call this story. So, as I believe you all know by now, we have launched our Let Light Shine campaign to restore our stained glass windows. I've been reading historical documents and studying up and thinking about what to do. Pastor Michael and I decided to choose texts to read in church that work on the windows with the stories that are drawn in glass. This was a challenge for us because most of the figures in the windows are taken from the Old Testament. So we struggled a bit in deciding what texts to use for the gospel. The easiest one to use is the sower, the one in the very middle, the parable of the sower. Our children are going to be studying the parable of the sower for the month of October. So we want to keep that one till the very last Sunday in October after the kids have had a chance to talk about it. Then we'll talk about it together as a church. Next Sunday, Pastor Michael is going to be talking about Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. You're in that left-hand panel of the glass. The third Sunday, we're going to read the story of the plowman. You can't talk about the window without talking about the John Deere plow in the window, yes? Yeah. One of the skills that I taught writers back when I was still teaching writing is that when you start to do something, when you start to write something, you want to make sense of things, start with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind. So when Pastor and Michael and I were talking about telling the stories of the window, we thought it might make sense to start with the story of bread, which, after all, is the result of plowing the land and sowing the seed and nurturing the crop. The plowman plows, the sower sows, the bread is made. We made this decision without even thinking about the fact that yesterday was our mobile food pantry here at the church. It didn't officially start until 10 a.m., but we had people outside as early as 8 a.m. Our own people got here around 8:30, and by 9 we started sign-ups. And as soon as people had their number and had signed up, then they came into our Sun Cafe, where Wes had a meal spread out for them. And you know what we used to feed them? The leftover German chocolate cake that we had frozen from the Oktoberfest the week before. We had a lot of that. We didn't get a lot of people turn out as many as we want, so we had leftovers. So Wes opened up the Sun Cafe, and there were so many people down in the Sun Cafe that they spilled over into the fellowship hall, sitting in the chairs that we had set up to begin our Let Light Shine campaign. Story. You can't plan that. We fed 105 families in this church yesterday. And after the last family had come through, and as we were breaking down the boxes, we started moving a little faster because it started sprinkling a little bit. And just about the time the truck rolled away and we got into the fellowship hall, the rain came down. And we said, felt like God's blessing on our time together. Felt like a story. It made sense. And then today, we celebrate Holy Communion, a perfect story, made even more perfect as we remember the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Do you think the day before he went out fishing and caught the fish to get ready to take with him? Do you think he got up early in the morning that day to make 5 loaves of barley bread? Do you think maybe he was the one who plowed the field and sowed the seed and grinded the grain? 5 loaves, that's an awfully lot of food, isn't it? For one little boy, for an adult, let alone a boy. I wonder how he carried all that. And then, 5 loaves is enough for a lot of people, and if the 2 fish he brought are as big as the ones I catch, that would feed a multitude. That wasn't a joke. Hold on a second. No wonder this little fella was noticed by the disciples. 5 loaves of bread and 2 big fish. How could he escape notice? Surely he smelled like food. Surely a crowd would have started gathering around him, smelling the barley and the fish, hungry. And just as surely, the doubt of the disciples who worry there will be not enough, that too tells a story that we often feel when we are faced with needs that appear to overwhelm our resources. Even the disciple who noticed the boy dismisses his gifts as not enough, saying, "There's a boy here who has 5 loaves of barley and 2 fish, but what is that among so many people?" he says. But in a scene that foretells the story that we celebrate in Holy Communion, Jesus has the people sit down. He takes the bread and the fish and he blesses it. And he sends out his disciples to learn that there is enough, like German chocolate cake, plenty with leftovers. The truth is that faith and our call in life is something that we live into being. The story of this boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish, it helps us to see what we often feel and that people often question, whether the little we can give will be enough for the enormous needs in the world. But God has blessed us with more than enough. Blessings that have been given us by people who prepared us to feed others, as that little boy was certainly prepared by those who loved him. It's a gift, to be sure, to have given so much. But the gift of sharing is a greater gift still. Because as we begin to see how God works and how things come together for good, then we find that beyond our meager ability to do good on our own alone, we discover what it means when we answer to the call of God on our lives. We discover that God blesses our gifts, and through our faith, God feeds the world. Amen.